Welcome to the Dom Sub Devotion Podcast. Every episode of Dom Sub Devotion is an authentic reflection of our real life in a loving 24/7 DS marriage. If you crave the passion and intensity of a power exchange dynamic inside of a deeply loving and intimate relationship, you've found the right place. You can always find more from us in the show notes and at infinitedevotion.com. Thank you for listening.
Hi, Princess.
Hi, sir.
So today we are going to dive into the topic of needs and wants. And we're going to look at this from quite a few different perspectives and how we've evolved in this and seeing ourselves and seeing each other. The place I want to start this conversation is with how we approached this way back in the very beginning of our dynamic with this concept of the hierarchy of needs. And what this hierarchy of needs says is that the submissive's needs come first. The dominant's needs come second. And then the dominant's wants come third, the submissive's wants come fourth. And at the beginning, this was a really helpful concept for us. And one of the biggest reasons why was because it was a commitment from me to you that almost in exchange for you letting go of control, putting on my collar, becoming my submissive, that I was going to prioritize what you need over what I need. That I was going to look out for you and take care of you. So do you remember anything from that at the beginning of our dynamic? And did that feel helpful, or how did that hierarchy help at first?
It felt, what would be the right word? I'm just going to say helpful to know that I was getting put first. And now looking back, I can understand a lot more why that was necessary. And now I understand in a much different way why it's necessary, a much deeper way. But at the beginning, I didn't realize that I didn't act like I mattered. I didn't act like I really had needs. And so I don't really recall how we arrived at what our needs really were and wants, because we did differentiate. Or if you kind of just told me and I was like, yeah, that's good. Because let's be real, a big part of this was pretty unconscious for me, but with intention, I guess.
Well, you didn't let yourself want back then at all. And
No.
you also had the very deep people-pleasing, self-sacrificial approach to everything. And this is a part of why it was important. Because in order for you to feel safe enough to start letting go of some of those patterns, you needed to feel like you were being looked after and taken care of.
And I still do.
And you still do, and you always will. But in large part, what this commitment to putting your needs first really was, from my perspective, was I'm going to take care of you before I take care of me. Not that I'm not going to take care of me, right? This wasn't ever supposed to be a self-sacrifice thing. I ended up doing that some on my own too,
Yeah.
which wasn't helpful, but that was my own unconscious pattern of suppression.
But we learned these things by laying this out on the table and making a commitment to it.
Right.
And that's what allowed us to see some of these things.
Exactly. So when it came to putting your needs first, for me, it really was, as I'm looking at how I'm going to lead this relationship, I'm going to prioritize leading you to a place of being more free, more open, more able to let go and submit and follow, rather than focusing on getting what I want from you, putting what you need over what I need.
Mm-hmm. I remember that feeling really good to me. Just defining that.
It also really challenged you because you didn't like being put first.
Very true.
You kind of wanted to be last. You wanted to blend into the background and hide.
Oh my gosh. And my eyes really have been open to all the ways that I would do that. I couldn't see that before. I still catch it myself. I know you do. Falling in some of those patterns of like, make sure you get what you want.
Yeah. So eventually we evolved out of that hierarchy for one big reason, where we stopped using it, specifically stopped using it as it related to you and your needs and your wants. Because when you started trying to figure out then, okay, my needs come before my wants, but his needs come before my wants. So what's a need and what's a want? And then is it important or is it not? And you ended up getting really kind of in your head about what's a need, what's a want. And I told you, you know what? I don't want you to differentiate anymore between what you need and your want, what you need and what you want. I want you to share all of them with me as your desires. And then I will determine for you what it is that you really need, because you would think you needed just the bare minimum to keep yourself alive and everything else didn't matter. That was kind of the people pleasing approach. And I
Yeah.
realized that what you really needed was far more than what you were ever going to allow yourself to admit.
Oh man, I still feel the depths of that, minimizing so much about myself and any desire for life. Like, dream big? Nah, not a thing for me. It was like, what do I need to live? Not very much.
That's what a lot of people get to when they start thinking about what is a need. Is it really just anything that keeps you from dying?
Yeah,
To keep your body alive? Is that all you really need?
no,
No, it's not. Because I think we are here on earth as human beings in for more of a purpose than to not die.
absolutely. You know, the other thing that really started to stand out to me, I know that along the way was like, well, where are my needs coming or my wants coming from? Where are my desires coming from at all? Am I desiring from my mind, from my ego, or am I desiring pure from my body? And that was like really hard to tune into. And then if it did feel real, I would judge it and shame it and like, no, no, no. Like that ego would overpower and really start to be like, no, 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 you don't need that. And so it just got really messy in myself, which is only going to put me in my head. And so the more that I can now live in just expressing desire with you, and this is still a work in progress for me because I still catch myself wanting something such as ice cream. And then that ego is like, nope, you can't eat that. Like, ah. And so, in all honesty, I still catch that stuff happening.
I know you do. And I also know that you will have, I'll say it this way. I know that you still have times where there are things that feel very important to you that you will try to talk yourself out of.
Yeah.
Sometimes just because it would be uncomfortable to admit it out loud.
Yep.
So, another thing that's important in these conversations around needs and wants is looking at the difference between physical, material things and emotional and even spiritual needs and desires and wants.
And sexual. You can't not add that in there.
Right. I almost consider sexual as part of the spiritual.
I agree, but for the sake of this, I want to make sure we specifically speak to that.
Yes, because that is a really big area that's challenging for people and has been for each of us to speak up and express and share openly about what those desires are.
Absolutely. It's a necessary part.
So I bring this up because I know that at some points and in some of these conversations we've had together and with other people, when you start talking about needs and wants and desires, the mind can go to stuff and things. And this is really a much bigger conversation than it is just about houses and purses and cars and material things.
Absolutely. It's a lot of times there's something underneath that needs to be expressed. A woman can really want to go shopping a lot. I want new clothes. I want a purse. I want shoes. I want this. I want this. I want this. What's the hole you're trying to fill?
And that's a great transition to talk about getting our needs met as a, well, let's say it this way, having needs versus being needy. And on that conversation, I want to start with it from the dominant, from the masculine perspective, because this gets challenging, I think, in guys trying to figure out for themselves, where do my needs fit? Because it never feels good when a guy is needy.
No.
It doesn't feel good to his woman, but it doesn't feel good in himself either.
Okay.
And I get asked this question eventually when we go down this train of conversation with men. It always ends up coming to, well, what's the difference between, how do I have a need without being needy? What's the difference between needs and neediness?
Very important question.
And to me, that really is, that difference is, if you are trying to fill a hole in yourself by something that you think you need from your partner or in the physical world, if it's money, if it's status, if it's fame, if it's sex, if it's affection, whatever you think that you need, if it's coming from a place of trying to fill a void in yourself, it's always going to come across as needy. And it's going to feel needy.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you are whole and solid in yourself, then being able to express a need is really just a very clear statement of fact. So how does that feel different from you? I've been needy plenty in our past, in our 15 and a half years together.
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel different when I'm solid and clearly expressing a need versus coming to you from an energy of neediness?
It's night and day difference. But I also know where I was back then. And so when you were needy, I was very unconscious. So I remember getting to the point of like, okay, so we knew our 5 love languages, or our top two of the 5. And yours was words of affirmation. And every so often we'd hit this same damn spot where you were feeling empty. And I was like, oh my gosh. And you would be like, can you please just like share some words of affirmation with me, or however you asked it, right?
Just say something nice to me, please.
Right. And I always said I loved you. I would say that every single day, multiple times. But that wasn't what you were getting at. You were speaking to specifically to how I make you feel, is what we kind of like eventually. I'm sorry, did I say that wrong? How you make me feel about you.
Right.
And that was probably coming from a void in you, but also partly valid, right? Because I still think that's a need for you, right?
Absolutely, it's a need.
So, but in me, what I would feel in that is without even catching that mental fuckery going on, it would be like, oh my gosh, here you go again. You're failing. You're not good enough. You're not doing it right. And that's what would pull me down. And I'd be like, fuck. Now you had to ask for it. How is it ever going to feel genuine, like to receive? Because you got to the point of feeling that low. And so we sat there in this like messy, mucky, like I probably cried. And like I remember this happened in bed so many times.
Right. And it would feel to me like, because you weren't always very good at articulating what was going on in you.
No.
So it would just seem like I had somehow burdened you by speaking up for something that I needed.
Yeah, because I was lost in my head, and then I was like, okay, what am I going to say? Well, I can't say that because I said it last time. Like I'd put the pressure on myself to come up with the perfect words. Like I would be so lost in the unconscious patterns. And so now, when I've rid those things from me, I can just receive things so much differently and better. And with a desire to give to you, because I trust that when you bring a need to me, it's not from a place of emptiness anymore.
In part because I don't let myself get empty
Right.
anymore.
Right.
I speak up long before I feel so completely empty. If there's anything that I need from you, I just say it. And a part of why this would get so needy from me is I wouldn't speak up until it had gone so far. And in those times where it would get that mucky and that ugly, it was never that I didn't think that you loved me or felt affection or appreciation towards me. I knew you did. But when you wouldn't share it, when you wouldn't speak up and express what it was that you felt, and then you were so in your head, I could never connect to how you actually felt about me.
But I'm also going to point a couple things out here. This is the same exact pattern that we as young children experience with our parents if we grew up not feeling loved. Because,
With emotionally distant or
well, right.
inconsistent parents.
And I'm only going to speak to my experience here because I knew my parents loved me, but I got to a point where I didn't feel it. Well, guess what? I had walls up around my heart too. And I know you had walls up around your heart. So it wasn't that you just weren't getting that need met. You also were in a self-protection mode because I remember how these walls came crashing down for you. I remember some of the moments where you recognized that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but then everything started to feel different and be received differently too. It was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know there was a mesh strainer covering my heart and only letting in love through like two little holes.
Well, it got needy because I needed you to show me that you love me in these very specific ways,
Exactly.
that to fill that hole in me, that it had to come in these very specific ways. And this is how guys, by the way, end up getting themselves in a position where they are telling their woman that what I need from you is for you to suck my dick. I need this. I need that. Well, no, what you really need is to feel how she feels about you, and to
Yes.
feel that expressed through her actions. But because you have these subconscious protections, now you've limited down the ways that you will allow her to show her affection for you.
Yes. So I want to put a point on this because I know this is a thing for so many people. Like men saying, I need my dick sucked by you. I need that. I need that. And the question is, what are you wanting to experience by that show of physical affection and receiving of pleasure in that specific way? And that's the beautiful thing when you can bring that question to needs and really sit with them. For myself, that helps me tune into what am I really desiring? And I know that's not the way we truly approach it. And I do desire, I need to express my desires to you. You want them all. But for me, in starting to just tune into my own experience and see myself and being willing to call bullshit on my ego, like it's an important part of how to approach this for myself too.
Yeah, and as guys, we think that when we're in this unconscious state, we think that what we want or what we need is the physical acts that a woman can do to us. But then if you ask any guy if it would be the same, if it was just pure obligation and doing something because she knows you need it, or really feeling like she wants to give herself to you in that way, again, it's not even the same experience. So that's your point. What is it that you want to experience? And if you aren't connected to the emotional experience and of receptivity that you want out of this, then you're going to end up coming across as needy because you're just trying to get something from her. And in reality, for us as men to get our needs met, the only way we really feel like we are getting our needs met is if we are receiving the things that we need as a reflection of how we are living our life.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it doesn't actually meet the need. It's just dumping energy into a black hole of inner emptiness.
So, can you speak more to what that experience has been almost 5 years ago, earlier in our marriage when we were both way more unconscious,
Mhm.
to like along the way to where we are now? How is it different for you?
For me now, I take more responsibility for getting my own needs met, meaning speaking up for them. That was like near impossible for me 5 years ago, to just say what it is that I really needed. It was so covert and below the surface, trying to manipulate the circumstances and situation for to get you to just do the things that I thought I wanted you to do. So over time, it has been challenging my own pattern of suppression. And frankly, it takes courage to express a need when you recognize that the meeting of that need is not under your control.
Yeah.
So I just said take responsibility for my own needs and recognize that they're not under my control. Paradox.
Yep.
Because I do have to take responsibility for making clear what it is that I need from you.
Yes.
And I also cannot force you to feel.
Never.
So I can be very clear with what it is that I need from you. I can share it very directly, but it is always a surrendering and a letting go to your ability and willingness to play your part in that. And if I don't surrender and let go, then it will never actually feel like that need is met, because it'll always be tinged with forcefulness and control and manipulation. And this is where dominance doesn't get your need met just by being bossy.
Right. You can definitely play those roles, but that is not authenticity.
Right. And that's why dominance and submission, again, is a kink. Fun, sexy, exciting, turn on, all of that. When the heart gets involved, when love gets involved, and when we try to do this over an extended period of time inside of a long-term healthy relationship, we have to look at the emotional side of all of these little things, or we just never actually get there. We end up just trying to fill those voids. Both dominant and submissive do this, trying to fill a void by getting something from the other person, but no one ever actually feels fulfilled and fully alive.
Yeah. It's definitely been a journey to arrive now where I'm at. I remember speaking recently on a podcast kind of to this topic of wanting to meet your needs. And I want all of you. If you come across a new desire, it's not even a need. Let's just use desire on your part too, because there needs to be room for things to change, things to evolve. As we become more of ourselves, as we tune into what is for us, I would say that things are going to change and new desires are going to surface. And so having the courage to bring that to your partner, well, first, accept it in yourself. And then two, the courage to bring it to your partner. And for me, if you bring me something and I'm like, oh, fuck that, like, whew, feel that one fear in my system, but okay, like I'm at the point now where I can sit in, I want to give that to you. I'm also feeling some fear. And being able to have the conversations in complete vulnerability and leaving room for things to evolve and shift and change on a moment to moment daily basis over time. When you can meet each other with acceptance of the moments, I guess, even if it's like, I want to experience X. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's a little much, but let's keep that real. Let's play with it, whatever it is, and let it evolve in us without attachment to a timeline of getting.
And that's where the commitment to, number one, the how good can this get approach is really important, because when you take that approach to your life and relationship, then everything you desire is something that I desire for you. And everything that I desire is something you desire for me, even if it takes a little time. And even if the way that that manifests itself is different than expectation. But also, in order to be able to have those conversations, we have to be willing to set down the ego and to get beyond the triggers, not allowing fear to overtake us and trigger us to a point where we can't have that actual conversation.
Right. And I've been there. Like, let's be real.
So have I.
I've been there. And I've been in parts where it's like, oh, okay, I can receive that, no problem. And then it's like the next thing is like, oh fuck no. That's a no forever. All of that is an okay part of the journey.
Right.
And when you can bring so much acceptance to the realness of where yourself is at, but then each other, like this is where it truly draws you closer. I want to speak to this other piece that I think is really important. And I can't remember if I said this towards the beginning or not, but for me, this whole like needs and wants thing, really being able for myself to accept that there's a lot of times I don't know what I need. And I feel like it doesn't really matter where it all comes from, but I will speak to this part of society in general of like growing up. We kids go from high school and then it's like go to college and you're supposed to know what you want to do. Right? Like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And you're like, I don't know. And at that age, I mean, most kids don't know, and things change and evolve. But just even that in itself can leave us as women feeling like we're supposed to know. What do I need? What do I want out of life? And I say, fuck that. And when I have come to acceptance of not knowing and releasing the pressure from myself and living in what feels pretty chaotic sometimes of like, well, I want this and I want that and I want that thing over there. And it's like, I don't even know how all that can happen or even be possible. And sometimes things literally are pretty close to impossible. But when I can just live in the desire of wanting it and be like, here's my desires, you can receive them and start to make sense of things for me in a way that just doesn't seem like my gift. I don't know. I mean,
This is submission when you really connect to it from a place of authenticity in yourself. Because I've witnessed you for a long time, and I think I've witnessed most women I've spent time around in my life in some version of this same thing, which is indecisiveness,
yeah.
overwhelmed by needing to make decisions. And this is a gift that I really see that I can offer you is you don't need to know. I will pay attention to you, listen to you, hear you, feel you. And like I said earlier, in most cases, I've prioritized your needs much more highly than you have prioritized them for yourself. So, in accepting that you don't always know what's best for you, what's right for you, what you really want, and allowing me to lead you in that, our experience has been that you've gotten a lot more out of life because you haven't then been the limiting factor on the meeting of your own needs.
Yeah, because the only way that I allowed myself to be was in big time limitation. And that's why I couldn't see things for myself because I'm too close.
And that's why I, as a dominant, need to be connected to something beyond myself, to something bigger than just me. And I also need to be as healed and solid inside of myself as I can. Because if you're going to come to me and say, I don't know what I want, I don't know what I need, I don't want to make the decision, I just feel a whole bunch of stuff and please tell me what to do. If that's how you're going to come to me and the level of submission and surrender that you're going to offer me, and then I approach that from a place of having a void in myself or being empty in myself, then I can take all of that and just manipulate the hell out of you and use you to get whatever I want. And I won't even know that I'm doing it, because if I'm in that place of emptiness inside myself, I will just think I'm getting my way. My ego will be satisfied by your self-abandonment.
Yeah, and I can definitely see how, if that's the way things are approached in a relationship, that even, I'm just going to say if that was me, I'd like to think that it would feel like garbage to the submissive, which to some degrees it would, but the submissive's ego can be at play too in the, just the like, let's call it degradation, in the like lack of worth, feeling like this is what I deserve. Yeah, like that when egos can really play into that in each other, because I do believe that's sometimes many times what draws us together.
And that's where dominance and submission can really go one of two directions. It can be my own lack of self-worth, thinking that I'm getting what I want, being fulfilled by your own lack of self-worth,
Yeah.
trying to get a need filled by giving yourself away. And I'm trying to get a need filled by taking something from you. And both of us in complete avoidance of the reality of who we are, what we need, and what kind of life we deserve to live. The other direction being connecting to the truth of who we are and working towards authenticity and full expression of the truth of who we are as individuals and as souls. And then for me to be able to lead you when you say, I don't know what I want, please decide for me, tell me what I need. I don't want to make the decision. I'll do whatever you say. And then for me to be able to take that with love and with care and with attentiveness to you and what's important and what I've seen in you and who you really are, and then to make decisions for you that move you more in a direction of the fullest expression of your truth rather than just getting something from you. Because if I can do that, then guess what? There's more of you to give love to me.
Yeah.
And that's how I get my needs met. That's why the dominance needs have to come second. Because I can't actually have my needs met unless you are free and filled up and receiving all of me. I have to be patient enough to see you come into freedom, into receptivity, because the only way I truly get my needs met is if you are A, feeling a certain way about me, and B, able to express it.
Yep. And looking back, there are plenty of times where it was there, it wasn't, it was there, it wasn't, it was there, it wasn't. And even in my own experience, it'd be like, what the fuck happened? Like yesterday it felt really easy and today it doesn't. And that also was just part of the journey for me too, because I had to keep going and release all sorts of resistance, the stored emotions, getting rid of those false belief systems around feeling unworthy and like I didn't matter. And the beautiful thing for me is like, oh my gosh, the desire to meet your desires just like is there. And I didn't have to do anything. Like, I didn't have to go get anything. It's just purely there out of the love and devotion I have for you.
And it's real. You're not trying to forcefully figure out how to make yourself be okay with something. And
No,
and you're not figuring out how to suppress your own wants and needs and desires just because you think you have to give me what I want.
no, there's plenty of room for conversations and patience. And I can think of one thing for us where I'm like, that's enough for me right now on one of your wants. And I'm like, maybe. Let's put it in a maybe category. Maybe someday. Not yet.
Well, that's where I have to be okay with that, because if I just were to force this out of you, then it's never going to feel good.
Yeah. And I want to be clear here. It was a want that you expressed. It's not a like emotional need. It's a fun want.
Another thing that I think is really important is that what we really need is not always what we think we want,
Yes.
because it can feel like I'm not getting my needs met. It can feel like you're not getting what you want, when in reality, life is trying to show us and give us exactly what we need. This is a little bit of a turn here in the conversation towards almost a more spiritual approach to looking at needs and wants. But I think one of the things that I've really come to appreciate about the way that the universe works and gives to me is that I may think I really want X. I may even believe that I need X. But if I'm so honed in on X as the only way that I can have this need met, I might miss the fact that in the pursuit of that, what I really needed was to learn a lesson.
Yeah.
And if I'm so worried about if I'm going to get or not get what I think I want or what I think I need, I'm so attached to that outcome. A lot of times, what we really need is to learn something in the pursuit of what it is that we felt like we really wanted.
Hmm.
And we've both learned a lot when we've recognized and taken this truth to heart that everything is happening for us, not to us. If I don't get what I thought I wanted, there's something there for me if I can be open to it. There's something there for me to learn. There's something for me to understand. But we can't get so attached to the specifics of what it is that we think that we are wanting or needing, because what we really want or what we really need, we may be oblivious to.
I agree.
So I want to know from you, what is your experience then of not knowing what it is that you really want? What does it feel like to you to accept uncertainty in your own wants?
This is an interesting one for me because what I don't know, because I only know my experience, and my experience had been so much limitation. And so, you know, I've heard manifest the life of your dreams and dream big and you can have whatever you want. The world is your oyster. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's take this for example. Looking for a different place to live. I can think that living by the mountains sounds gorgeous. I can think that that's what I want. But the key word there is think. And so we went to Eastern Tennessee. Because let me back up here. I remember going on a walk one day by myself, and I'm like, I'm just going to dream on this walk. If I could live anywhere, where do I want to live? And it wasn't necessarily like locations, it was more about like physical landscapes that I was dreaming in. And that was before that we actually went to Eastern Tennessee then. And so we spent 2 months there. And at the beginning, it was like, oh my gosh, this is gorgeous, right? Yep, just like I thought. So pretty. And that was only where we were. So many different areas to experience of mountains that are really gorgeous. But driving out of that area was when I really started to realize that I had started to feel suffocated with so much physical landscape like around me, and there was up and there was down, and I was like, oh my gosh, it just started to not feel good, and I didn't realize it until we drove out of it. And so also I'm like, oh my gosh, it sounds amazing to live on the beach, to go for a walk on the beach. We've been on beach vacations. Every day I would walk or run on the beach, and that's just so amazing. But what would that experience actually be like to be on the beach where you're probably on top of other people? So, what I've really realized is to truly know what I want, I need to experience things. And so, for me, I'm still learning what is it like to desire big and want big from a pure desire from the body. Not that desires from the mind are bad or wrong. That's not what I'm getting at here. What I'm getting at is I feel like I kind of just live in, I want what's for me. And I can find excitement in the uncertainty of the not knowing what is actually for me and playing with life experiences to figure that out.
Yeah, and this is where, from my perspective, I've had to get out of the energy of trying to please you. Because if I'm approaching leading you with any sort of, I need to figure out what you want and then give it to you, that keeps you from letting go of control, because I'm putting you in control because I will continue to make you figure out what you want and tell me so I can give it to you so I feel like a good boy.
And
And
just hearing you explain it that way, like I'm just like, "Ah," I just want to scream. I'm like, no, no, stop, please.
and I used to do this a lot, and I know so many men approach their life and their leadership this way. And what they don't understand is that you are putting her in control when you are trying to please her. You're making her decide, and then you are giving her what she wants. And if you are in a relationship where you are a masculine dominant and you are with a feminine submissive, putting her in the role, that's putting her in the role of the dom,
Yeah.
saying, tell me what you want so I can please you. I cannot have any threads of that in my leadership for you if you are really going to let go of control. Now, I know there's heart behind the reason why a guy would do it that way. He wants, like, I want to make you happy. I want to see you happy. I want to feel you full of joy. So I want to give to you. I want to meet your needs. I want to fulfill your desires. But you don't know what those desires really are until you are already experiencing them.
Yeah, and approaching it that way can just be really soothing to her ego and ways that she tries to control. Because let's be real, there was, I'm sure, a point where there were things that I wanted to be in charge of. And maybe some of them I would have acted like I didn't want to be, but I was showing up as I wanted to be in charge of them. And I couldn't see that in myself. It's taken like seeing things kind of one by one and being called out on it eventually when I could receive that. And sometimes it took me just coming to the point of like, oh fuck, here's another thing that's exhausting. Here, take it. And so like there is it's a dance here because it's not all or nothing all at one time either. These things can be seen slowly.
It's too much to try to do it all at once because these patterns go all the way back to both of our childhoods and they have to be unwound, and we have to make new conscious decisions about how we're going to approach living and loving and relating to each other again as we have experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm not going to take a pleasing approach by putting you in control, making you figure out what you want so I can give it to you, the other approach means I'm going to have to lead you into and through experiences where you may be uncomfortable,
Yep.
where you may think that this is not what you want. And again, if I'm trying to lay a golden path for you and make you feel okay before I take you into any kind of experience, I'm still putting you in control because I'm still telling you that you have to be okay before I can lead you.
Yeah, and I do want to put a point kind of on that because that can sound like force. But this is where in our relationship there has been, conversations about that. And it doesn't mean that I'm not like I'm feeling 100% ready and confident. I might be feeling some fear, but fear is false evidence appearing real. And so I know that. And so I can step forward because I trust you to where you're leading me, even when I'm not feeling super ready. I'm okay with that. And so it's never been by force, but it's also not been, I don't really know how to say, like, without fear always. I guess I'll say it that way.
Right. So I have to be able to see what's right,
Mm-hmm.
to have a pretty good idea of how to create an experience or how to lead our lives or whatever the thing is, little or big. Planning an afternoon out or figuring out the direction of our life and where we're going to live. It isn't about pleasing you. It is about understanding what matters to you, understanding you and caring about you and feeling you and loving you and having heard you as you've expressed to me different desires, but then being able to make a decision and take us down a path that to me seems like the best option given all of the circumstances. Again, for someone who's tried to take the pleasing approach, this is confrontational. This is hard,
I bet.
especially at first, because these are the old patterns of I must please mom or my life is going to suck, getting directly confronted. And as I've stepped into this, and as men in general step into a more in control, dominant approach to leadership, there's going to be this voice screaming in the back of his head that says, don't screw up, pay a lot of attention to her. Is she mad? Is she upset? Is she bothered? Is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? That's the fear that we have as men, is this fear that we're going to upset you. And then we aren't going to be okay because you're not okay. That's the old patterns that we are trying to reverse, and that I've had to reverse in myself to be able to lead you in a way that doesn't put you in control.
I want to just back up to something you said there, because you had referenced pleasing mom. But I think this can also, for a man, be having to please your own dad. Because I'm guessing that if you grew up as having to really please anyone and not go with what you want, it doesn't matter if it was mom or dad in certain ways. Maybe just equates to the wife a little bit more from mom, but I could also see how it can create just this paralyzed, I don't want to make decisions in a man if you had the domineering parents of trying to really dictate what your life was as a man.
Yeah. And then you will try to either choose partners or manipulate your partners into telling you what they want so that you can give it to them.
Yeah.
And it puts you in a position of neediness, and it puts you in a position of being out of control of your own reality. And that doesn't feel solid or strong to a guy inside of himself. And again, I'll come back to what I've said a couple times here today. If you aren't receiving from me first, and then sharing with me how you feel about me, I'm never going to actually feel like I have my needs met from a place of strength.
And that's the ultimate, like, desire right there.
And the ultimate challenge, because like I said, it makes me responsible in some ways for getting my own needs met.
Which is why the man has to go first, which is taking responsibility for his life.
Yep. And it's also why a woman needs to accept that she's going to need to receive first and be put first and put herself first,
Mm-hmm.
and prioritize herself and speak up and use her voice, because only when she feels safe enough to receive from me will it feel safe enough for me to lay myself out there and give to you. That's why this is a co-creation between dominant and submissive, between man and woman. I can do all the work that I want, but if you can't receive me, then you're never going to be able to reflect authentic feelings back to me, and I'm never going to have my needs met.
Right.
You can do all the work you want to be receptive to me, but if I can't show up in a place of grounded strength, you're never going to receive from me what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And this always ends up meaning that we do this together, but it has to be led by the man.
Right.
It has to. Initiation is a function of masculine energy. So I can't put you in the position to have to go first, or no one's needs get met.
Yeah. I'm really thankful for where we are.
And again, all of this work is worth it because it is confrontational. It's hard. It brings up all of this stuff. And people ask us, why do we have to do all of this emotional stuff? I just want to be in a dom sub relationship. Well, you can't be in a dom sub relationship if you are just two empty people trying to throw energy into the void of each other. You'll never, ever, ever fill that void from outside of yourself. You have to fill it inside of yourself and through the ways that you love each other. And the difference in that is subtle, but it is what I believe that what we've experienced and what we teach in a way that no one else does. And I think it's what makes us special together. And it's what makes us special as infinite devotion and what we do and how we help people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really thankful that we went down this journey of dominance and submission.
I'm glad you said yes.
Me too.